Hey folks, I'm asked quite frequently, what do we do first? What's the first thing we should do? And I understand. When I started preparedness, and we didn't call it that back in the 70s, we called it survivalism. When I got started on it back then, I remember I went into a little bookstore. It was kind of an off-the-wall type of bookstore, and I got a book called Hammer Strike, and I read that book. And then I went to a survival store, and I met all kinds of people that were very interesting and colorful individuals. Not so much the crazies that came along later. These were some very enigmatic folks. Some of them were quite eccentric, but at the end of the day, it got me hooked. It got me started. I remember being completely overwhelmed, just like you are. I get it. I really do. And I apologize because at times I know when I talk, I use a lot of insider terminology. And I try to back up a little bit and go, wow, I have to remember that literally thousands of you are new to the idea of preparedness. And I'm grateful for the trust that you've placed in me. I'm also grateful many of you have said my spouse was not on board with preparedness until he or she heard you talking because you talked about it in common sense terminology. And I think if you go to this channel or to Southern Prepper One or some of the others out there that are on the bottom of this channel page, you'll see that these people are pretty much normal folks just like you and me. They're not wild-eyed fanatics, but nonetheless, whoever you wind up using to get your spouse on board, that's a good thing because you really, if you're going to have two oxen pulling a plow, they need to be equally yoked. You don't need to have one saying, well, I don't believe in this, and the other one saying, I do. That's going to be really hard because you're not only pulling the plow by yourself, you're having to drag that other oxen down the row with you. All right. So what do we do first? Right after I get done talking here and you see my face, there's going to be a series of slides come up. Yes, some of you that are military are going, oh my God, he's PowerPointing me, isn't he? Wow, I thought he liked me. Yes, I do. But the thing is, some of this stuff needs to be presented in a graphic format. And so I'll be reading along and following through it. There's a few graphics in there that I didn't like. They were kind of hand-jammed. Now I've done them in PowerPoint so they're a little easier to read. And a couple of them you may want to actually screen capture and download, but then I want you to make your own with your own categories on there and your own special information that pertains to your specific situation and whatever scenario you have in mind. At the end of the day, we're all kind of prepping because we smell smoke, right? We don't see the fire, but we smell smoke, and we know where there's smoke, there's fire. That's right. And so we know that something is afoot. Something could happen, and we are somewhat concerned over that. And it's because we don't know. Sometimes we get very concerned. And I don't know either. I do have a suspicion it may be an economic collapse coming. And I've had that suspicion for a couple of years, but I have a very strong suspicion about it. Maybe that's because I read too much of the economic indicators. Maybe it's because I got a friend that's a stockbroker, and he and I chat now and then, and he tells me about some of the crazy stuff that's going on up on Wall Street and other places. But either way, this next little piece you're going to see is going to walk us through what you should do first. So let's jump right into it. And when we get done, we'll come back here and we'll talk a bit more.
All right, this is a slideshow, and we'll call it Preparedness 101. It's a concept of preparedness and homesteading that I found to be as simple as it is sustainable. Work in concentric circles. You want to start with a target goal of 1 week. That's manageable, and that's also useful. That's going to help you with many of the disaster type scenarios that occur on a local level. We have governmental agencies that can fix things if you have a localized type disaster, and they can fix it fairly quick. That being said, people in the path of Hurricane Sandy, many of them still are without electricity. The goal is to be able to have everything you need for a week. That means you don't need to leave the house and buy or go find or purchase or acquire anything for a full week. This is just goal one. When I say have everything you need, think of your preparedness as sort of a chain. If you're missing a key element in there, you're going to be in trouble. That's why it's important to say, I'm going to go for a complete 1-week package of everything I need. And we'll talk about the elements on that chain later. But you need to consider that going whole hog in one direction, let's say that you know that you need water, so you spend all your time and money for the next year acquiring a super duper solar powered well and a bunch of other things which are awesome to have, but you leave out things like food, security, etc. You're going to have a broken chain. Work in a concentric circle type fashion. After you get a full week, then we're going to graduate to 2 weeks. And then, of course, naturally, the next thing we're going to graduate to is maybe 3 weeks or a month. But remember to work in concentric circles. Try to finalize the plan. Don't blow things off and leave them out because they're going to be the broken chain syndrome. Some of the things you'll find as you're going along is that you will be gaining proficiency. You'll get better and better at acquiring things, at learning things, at hooking up with other preppers and finding out good information. I encourage you to stay tuned to this channel for that reason, but also to go through and look at my playlist. I've done about 300 videos, and if you can take the time, I've tried to break them down into playlist formats so you can say, well, I want to learn a bit more about food, and I'll go to the food playlist, open it up, and watch those videos. When you get to about 3 months working in a concentric circle, many people stop there and then they go back and they tune up that 3-month package. They make sure they've got everything, because as you're going along, you'll find that one thing leads to another. Pretty soon, you start to get a little overwhelmed, but remember, having built your 1 week, your 2 week, 1 month package, so to speak, you have a sense of confidence and security. Now, I do this as a leader in the military. I give people a small goal the first time I send them out and train them to do something. You don't take them on day one and send them out to do the Special Forces selection course, obstacle course, Nasty Nick. You don't send them over on to Nasty Nick the first day of basic training. You send them to something a little bit more manageable. Otherwise, they're going to go out there to Camp Row and they're going to fail. And that means they're going to lose their confidence in themselves. Same thing for you. Go for a week, then 2, then a month, then 3 months. When you get to 3 months, some people stop there. Others, like myself, you may go on. I'm going for total self-sufficiency, but I've got about a year locked in for most categories. Let's talk about the categories now. Now, each circle, think of it like a chain, and each link consists of basically an element. And each of these elements are going to be the same from one chain to the next. So water is water, right? And that's going to be on every single one of your packages. So your 1 week package is going to have water, security, training, food. These are things that may be a little different for you. You may want to define them in a different way. You may want to categorize them in a different way. But I've put these up so that you will look at them at least to get an idea of where to start. Some things like heat, obviously, won't be as big a factor to you as they would be to someone like me or someone that lives even further north in Canada. We'll talk a little bit more about these elements later on, but I want you to understand that each of these categories may have a subcategory. For instance, security breaks out into firearms and ammo, training, including legal counsel and advice on use, optics, fencing, dogs, alarm, etc. All right? You're going to find it necessary to make lists when you're doing this of things that you'll need to purchase, because money is going to be probably the big limiting factor for 99% of you out there. And I have to say it up front, you cannot do this for free. You're not going to be able to prepare with nothing. Now, what do I mean by nothing? Well, you're going to have to either have a bunch of time or a bunch of money, one or the other. Some people have a lot of time on their hands and no money. Some people, very few, I found, have no time and a lot of money. Those are the ones that can afford to go out and pay someone else to do it for them. Most of us, though, are going to be in the do-it-yourself mode. So you make these lists like you see on this Excel spreadsheet in front of you. Now, I've broken down the 1-week plan for security, and I've probably gone a bit on the high end for many of this. But I listed a 12-gauge H&R Partner pump shotgun, and I have done a video series on self-defense for preppers. I recommend if you can't go out and buy something like an AR-AK, you consider a shotgun as your first purchase. Don't go with a handgun because you're going to spend, for a new one, a good one, $600 for something in the 9mm and up category that's reliable. You can go out and get a Glock 21 SF right now for about $650 brand new. And I'm just using brand new prices as a benchmark. Please, I don't need to know that Uncle Bud will sell you one, your Uncle Buckshot will sell you one for $25. Okay, that don't distract the subject here. The subject is what can you go out and pick up right away? And you can go out and pick up a 12-gauge H&R Partner, and I've done a video on that as well for $225. But when you factor in the ammunition and the training for all of these things, you're going to see that even buying an inexpensive gun starts to add up. Now, I have a lot of ammo on here, and that's way more than you would need for a week. So I would look at this, I'd write the list out, and then later I would tailor it to come down to a lot smaller package, maybe 23-inch slugs and 20 each of double-aught and number 1 buckshot. Okay. Record everything you use is going to be the next step. All the consumables, the things that you use like food and water and electricity, things that you need on a daily basis to survive. A good benchmark is to plan on about 10 gallons of water per person per day, but that doesn't have to be bottled water. That can just be water that you have stored or available. At least 2 gallons of bottled water per day because you're going to be cooking with some of that. The other 8 gallons, well, you say sanitation. That's partly for sanitation. Well, I'm not going to shower every day, so, well, wait a minute. We're talking about flushing the toilet. We're talking about a lot of other things. Washing clothes is going to have to be done at some point, even with a bucket. Food, 2,000 calories per day is a minimum to survive, and if you're under a stressful situation, like without rule of law or any sort of a disaster, you're probably going to be eating a bit more because you're going to be working a lot more. And don't forget electricity. Now, I just threw up 10 kilowatt hours. Go check the meter on your house, write down the number of kilowatt hours you're at today, or the day you begin recording, and then a week later, go out and record it again, divide that by 7. That's your daily use. Then you're going to have to go through, look at things like your refrigerator and all the other items you have and see which of those is using the most juice. You may not be able to keep your refrigerator running. You may need to plan on having to dispense with that if you can't afford a generator. So that means the food that you store is going to need to be some sort of canned, boxed goods or whatever else that's good for long-term storage. Obviously, you're not going to have fresh vegetables unless you happen to be a gardener and it's gardening season. Now, remember that some of these categories have subsets, like ammunition, but you're not going to be able to look at ammunition and go, well, this is how much we use in a week, because that's a very variable subject. That's something, hey, I hope you never have to use a weapon to defend yourself. But if you do, you're going to need a little bit of ammunition. But how do you know how many people are coming? Oh, that's a good question. I don't, so I always keep a large quantity of ammunition. Safety, a few things to discuss about that on safety. That's an issue that was on there, and I've talked about it in other videos. I'm going to cover it briefly here, but essentially, we don't really see a lot of the safety that's provided by folks like our fire department, our EMS, and our police department until we actually need them. But you also have to understand that you may not have these people available to you. You may call 911, and they may be overwhelmed. If it's real bad, they may not even be at home, or rather on the job, they'll be at home. Think of how, for instance, you can prevent having to call the 911 services. As a result, you can see their work site, for instance, and see they have periodic inspections. They also have fire drills, and they have fire prevention or accident prevention seminars and drives. And, they'll give you in the Army, they give you a little green sticky note or green sticky circle that you stick on your wristwatch that's supposed to tell you to think safety first, okay? They do inspections of the job site. They make sure there's not piles of trash laying up next to a space heater, etc. You need to do the same thing for yourself. I remember as a Boy Scout, one of the merit badges I got, I had to go through the house and do this checklist for all of these things. That was a great thing to do because I still have that skill set, which I learned over 40 years ago. Still have it, almost 45 years ago. Still have it, still use it. Avoidance is probably the best form of safety you can practice. Avoid doing dangerous things. Avoid doing stupid things. Obviously, you're not going bungee jumping, but what I'm talking about is some things are very dangerous. Using the chainsaw is very dangerous, even if you're skilled at it. Carefully consider the fact that you may not have emergency services to come rushing out there and whisk you away to the hospital. So think about, do you really need to do task X, Y, or Z? Also, PPE, that's proper protective equipment. Have personal protective equipment, whichever way you want to call it. Have things like gloves and face shields, and I have chainsaw chaps when I use the chainsaw, even though I have the hospital nearby. Goodness gracious, I'm accident prone. But remember, an ounce of prevention is truly worth a pound of cure. Ultimately, whether you're bugging out, whether you're staying in, safety, the best way to look at safety is to just slow down, take things a bit slower, don't rush, but you feel like you have to because, well, we feel like we're behind the power curve, don't we? Injuries from exertion, including heart attack, could also be an issue. Look, you're going to be doing a lot of things. Your body's going to be under a tremendous amount of stress. So if you're out of shape and you're under stress, your body is not going to handle it as well. And you could easily get sick or worse, get a heart attack. Staying in shape is also going to help you do all of these chores and labor. And speaking as a former first sergeant, I can tell you that soldiers that are in shape, they tend to have a little bit more physical courage, and that's going to be important as well. Have a little bit more determination, have a little bit more get up and go about them. Okay, let's talk about security. Security is provided, as I've said earlier, by our government, but it's done at all levels, and some of it you don't see. For instance, our military. Having a military keeps people like Korea from just launching a nuclear warhead over here and blowing up Washington, D.C. or New York City or both. The reason is because they know that there would be retaliation. It also keeps other countries at bay somewhat. Now, there's not a great threat of invasion from Nigeria getting in a bunch of rowboats and coming over here and attacking our country. But we still have a military for a number of reasons, and that's in a lot of geopolitics, and I don't want to get into a debate on that. But what I'm saying in the end is a lot of the things that security a lot of the security that's provided by our government is provided on a level you don't necessarily often see. If that's not there, that may be a factor. It may be an issue. But one thing you don't see is police. People say, well, I don't like cops because the only time you've seen a cop is when he gave you a ticket, or you see a video of some cop that's out of control that needs to be in prison. The thing is that the rest of them out there, they're doing a job quietly behind the scenes, and just their presence, along with the presence of armed citizens, keeps most criminals at bay. But it doesn't keep them all at bay, because we still have criminals out there doing things. We still have them doing stupid things, still have them hurting people. This utopians live in a fantasy world that will get them slaughtered during a serious brawl. I'm going to tell you, if New York City, if something bad happens and there's nationwide or worldwide brawl and there's rioting and everything, New York City is not going to be the place to be. You need to get out of there if you live there. Your plans for preparedness and survival should include bugging out as the very first thing that you're going to do, because That place, New York City, is not sustainable. It's filled with crazy people, and you don't want to be there because they're going to be a bunch of unarmed people being consumed like firewood in a giant bonfire by the armed people. That would be the criminals. Don't let their fantasies about how gun control is going to make our country a place of unicorn and rainbows fool you, because it ain't going to happen. Consider coordinating with your neighbors. If you're not in New York, by the way, but consider security plan, coordinate with your neighbors, something like a neighborhood watch. And I talk a little bit about that in my book, my novel, and things like having a signal. You make a noise and everybody comes running to the sound of the air horn, or the signal is that you fire your weapon. An intruder's in your house, you shoot him in the face with your shotgun, and that's a signal to your neighbors to come run and help in case he has friends and you're having a problem acquiring targets. Okay. Later on, you're going to find when you get into long-term on security, the dynamics will change. You're going to go from storing ammunition to perhaps reloading ammunition. That's for long-term sustainability. And I'm going to be getting into that soon, and my friend Bill is going to help me on that task. And this is true for most of the other categories as well. You can only store so much water, so you may need to look at, you get into long-term sustainability. I got water well, how am I going to get water out? If you have a 1,000-foot deep well, a pitcher pump isn't going to work. So this is true for most of your other categories as well. Everything's going to get a little bit bigger, but security is the one we're talking about now. Speaking of ammo, by the way, when people say with much alarm, you got 1,000 rounds of ammo, just say, well, gee, if you think that's a lot, Department of Homeland Security has bought 1.2 billion rounds, and they only have a few thousand employees. Wow. Okay, and let them chew on that. Sanitation. I need to mention sanitation because more people have died from disease than just about any other cause in this earth. And the most prevalent threat is going to be from improperly disposed of waste. Look, your toilet will continue to flush as long as you pour water into that bowl at the top. But when the sewers eventually get filled and backed up because they're not able to run the pumping stations, and most of them aren't just gravity fed, dumping out into a giant hole in the ground, well, you're going to have an outhouse. Okay, so medicine. Have a good supply of medicines you need. You need to know what, and that's hard to come up with because people say, well, my doctor will only give me X amount. I understand. You need to learn also what, if any, over-the-counter medicines will work as substitutes. Things like fish antibiotics, they'll work in a pinch if you have no people antibiotics, but by golly, I'm not telling you, don't buy your people antibiotics over at the drugstore. Don't go off the doctor's prescription, because I ain't a doctor, but I'm telling you that fish antibiotics have been proven to work in a pinch. Now, I don't know what the long-term effects will be on that, but if it's take the fish antibiotics or die, well, I'm going to take the fish antibiotics even though I know there's a risk. For long term, you may need to consider things like herbals or how to make your own medicines. But if you have a medicine that you have to be on, you do need to give this some priority. Stockpiling things like medicine, allergy relief medicine, especially if you have allergies, that sort of thing. If you have heartburn medicine, stockpiling all of that's going to make the difference between you barely getting by and you making it pretty well. Also, while we're talking medicine, we'll talk first aid a bit. Bandages and disinfectants like betadine and surgical soap, hydrogen peroxide. If you get seriously injured, you're going to go through these things like popcorn and you're going to blow through them. Remember, there may not be a hospital, okay? Concurrent with this comes the need to know how to use them. You can have a robust first aid kit, a combat lifesaver bag or whatever, or both. But the thing is, if you don't know how to use that stuff in there, sitting there opening it up while someone's bleeding to death and going, how do you use this bandage, is going to be the wrong answer. I suggest you subscribe right now to Patriot Nurse. Go to my channel page, go down to the bottom of the page, on the right corner, bottom of the page. And if many of you are ask a lot of questions, and it tells me you're not familiar with channel page, so I'll cover that real quick. There's a button either at the top or the bottom. They keep moving the thing around. And it says Maineprepper. You click on that button, it'll take you to the channel page. If this is an older video, you're probably going to lose the video, so hold off on doing that until the end of the video. But click on there, go to the channel page, and you'll see all of these buttons and links and things like that, and playlists when you get there. And that's what I recommend you do. And go there, find her channel, and subscribe. I subscribe, I watch her videos, and I'm up on this. I'm Combat Lifesaver. I've got all these other certifications, and I still go there because I learn a lot of things that I haven't picked up in some of the best courses out there. Medicine. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound to cure. Staying healthy, using things like hand sanitizers, being careful about how you prepare your food, being careful about what you do with your human waste, as well as what you're going to do with your garbage. Have plans for all of that. As you get going along, it's going to be quite a problem. Simple things like hand sanitizer are cheap as dirt right now, and they can stop a minor from becoming a major. A little tiny infection or cut on your hand in the field, for instance, when you're bugging out, can turn into a debilitating injury. That's why I tell people to wear gloves when they're out in the field, so you don't cut your finger open. But also so you don't get all those little nasty cuts and scrapes. And then when you go to eat your food, you have all this crud and dirt under your fingernails, and you're having to use your hands to prepare food. So you can take your gloves off and clean them easily with some hand sanitizer or soap and water if you got a stream nearby. Consider sanitation and medicine to be very closely linked, to be intertwined. Preventive medicine, in other words, also includes good sanitation. Training and practice. Wow. Okay, so you read a book on latrines and outhouses. That's good. I have a huge library, thousands of books in it. But have we ever done these things? Have you ever used a latrine? Do you understand the dynamics? It's a little bit more to it than you may think. You know that you can cook your food on a fire. Have you ever actually made a fire before? Ever actually cooked food on a fire? Do you understand that if you just stick your pan right into the flame, it's not going to cook your food, but it will burn the pan? You have to use coals, stuff like that. You may have a top-of-the-line battle rifle and 1,000 rounds of combat ammo, and good for you, you've got that done. Now, since your life and that of your family may depend on this tool, are you as proficient as you can be on it? Hint, the answer is no, especially for anybody that's shot a lot. You'll say, well, you know, I could always get better. I always need to be better. Because you never know who's going to come through door number 1 on your house one day, kicking, screaming, and shooting at you. So you may need to be better prepared than just being able to stand there calmly shooting at paper targets like you did on day 1 at the rifle range. The military learned long ago the value of training. People that practiced doing something in the comfort of safety and garrison had time to go back later during an after-action review and think about what they had done right and what they had done wrong and how to do it better next time. Also, your things may reveal that, wow, you know what? I need this little tiny piece of gear. I need something to carry my shotgun shells in. How easy it is to go out and buy something now. Go to a flea market or go to Goodwill and get a purse. Just get an old handbag and use that to carry your shot shells in if you can't afford anything else for a couple of bucks. How easy it is to go out and do that today. How impossible it's going to be during RAL. The last thing you want to do during RAL is to be going down to downtown looking for a store, because you're going to become a victim. Have a written plan. Now, I have an Excel spreadsheet that lists out the things I need to do by project, what I need to do. You can also do a reverse planning schedule. We'll talk about that in another video. But each project has everything delineated because mostly it's driven by purchase right now. Money is the big deciding factor. This way I know if I can afford it, and I know how if it's going to be a bank breaker or whatever. Look, if you've got a limited budget, and you look up there and you say, wow, that's going to cost me $1,000. Even though that may be a priority, you may need to reconsider. Speaking of battle rifle, for instance, you may say, I'd love to have an AR-15, but at $1,000 plus, that may not be feasible. So what do I need? I need to put something in my hand right now. And I just need it for home defense, so let's look at a shotgun. You may say, well, I've got a little bit more money than that, but I can't quite come up with that. I still don't recommend a pistol unless you need to have concealed carry. And I have several pistols, don't get me wrong. I'm very much in favor of rifles. It's like that movie Quigley Down Under. He prefers a rifle. Doesn't mean he doesn't know how to use a pistol. Doesn't mean he doesn't find the use for one now and then, but pretty much he can do everything with a pistol that he could do with his rifle. So each project has everything delineated in there, and it's important also if you're married, because if you have a family, because it's crucial everybody be on the same sheet of music. And it's tough if you're a prepper and your spouse isn't. Usually they send their spouse over here to listen to the channel because I try to give things in a calm and rational format, and that's good. Don't send them to somebody that's a wild-eyed fanatic because they're just going to frighten that person away. You got to start out slow with people. You can't just take them from 0 to 100 miles an hour. They'll break their neck. Don't get dogmatic in your planning. Avoid being too locked in on perfecting your 7-day preparedness circle before you go on to the 14-day. In other words, if you see a good bargain or opportunity on something and you know you're going to need it later down the road, do it. If you see a reloader, I don't mean 10% off. I mean somebody's getting out of the reloading hobby, or a relative has just inherited something from a family member and you find out they don't want it. And you can get it for a good price, 10 cents on the dollar. Grab it, man. Get on it. Don't compare yourself too much to other people in this. Don't look over at Southern Prepper 1 and go, oh man, I'll never get there. Well, you know what? He started out with nothing, just like you and just like me and just like all the rest of us. And just by making it a priority and having the support of his wife and being a really smart guy on top of it, he's done very well, and I really very much admire him on a lot of levels. Now, on that note, he's also somebody I recommend that you subscribe to. Don't get too specific. Avoid having too narrow a scenario in mind, or just one. The nuclear power plant at the end of the street, it may melt down, and that's a possibility. But you may want to also consider economic collapse. So the nuclear power plant may never melt down, yet an economic collapse could occur tomorrow. Make sure, therefore, that your most important preps are the ones that are generic and apply to all. Things like having water and food and the ability to defend yourself. Make sure you have those things before you get into those real specific and narrow ones. Unless you just feel like that problem, that nuclear power plant down at the end of the street, is absolutely going to melt down here in the next few days. Chances are pretty good, though, that most of us don't see the scenarios that we prepare for as happening today or tomorrow. Unless, of course, you're living in the path of a hurricane and you're watching it on the news coming right now, and you haven't done anything, and now's the time to get busy. Okay. Don't get discouraged. When you have to eat an entire elephant, well, just start with a piece you know you can eat right now. Don't let the fear, the idea that, man, I'm starting too late, I'll never get it done, keep you from prepping. Look, I began back in 1977. Back in the 70s, they were talking about all this post-apocalyptic stuff, 77 reasons why Jesus is coming back in 1977. Things like that were there. And it was quite scary, and I felt like I had to rush and panic. Well, along the way, I noticed that things haven't happened yet, but minor incidences have happened. Having a lot of the preps that I've had in place were very useful during the number of hurricanes I went through. When Y2K came rolling down the road, and we were pretty concerned about that, everybody started to prepare, and I was already kind of there, and I knew the things that I needed to do. So I knew that some things were going to become very scarce the closer we got to the year 2000. And so we took care of that then. Then we were able to focus and stay on a pretty steady track and get things as well along the way as possible. We were pretty well prepared, my family and I were, for the Y2K, which fortunately didn't happen. If nothing ever happens, which I doubt, during our lifetime, then you still have this peace of mind that comes from knowing you're prepared. But don't get discouraged. You just start where you are and start preparing. And you're going to find that's going to be a lot better than doing nothing. There are a lot of benefits to preparedness. It's better than money in the bank. People have lost their jobs and told me they had to use their food or some of the other things to survive on. And that's good. Having that there gives you peace of mind. When you hear all this stuff, the news is filled daily with all of these wars and rumors of wars and threats and disasters and everything else. And it's enough to make your head spin. Well, if you're prepared, you can have a sense of peace about it and go, wow, that's going to be bad. And you can actually look at things a bit more realistically. I've had to use my first aid items, for instance, for daily emergencies. I get hurt a lot. That's because I'm busy. I'm always doing things. But I've had these things on hand and had to use them right away. My firearms are as much a prevention of being victimized during RAW as they are the minimum responsibility of every patriotic American. And when I start hunting, hopefully in the near future, they'll be useful for that as well. But keep in mind, and I must throw this in there, the Second Amendment is not about my right to keep and bear hunting rifles. That's just a side addition. It's there to prevent tyranny. Now, my sons learn to be strong and responsible. This is from preparedness and things that parents want. You don't make that happen by simply giving them a lecture. It happens by practice and practical application. And having a little farm or homestead is a great place to raise children because it teaches them responsibility and to be strong and to be independent and also to be the kind of person that you can rely on. Now, I'm going to give you my point of view as a former civil military operations expert, that we are the people that were tasked with going into a host nation or an invaded nation and helping to stabilize and rebuild the infrastructure and the economy. Now, I didn't drive around with a truck full of tools fixing broken light switches. Our job was to go in there and find things like the economic structures, the ministers of agriculture and things like that. Get everything put back together so the people could get back to normal. Here's what I found during that and watching that. We would do assessments of the local areas, of the markets and the people to see what their capability was to get back on their feet and what sort of help they might need. Prepared people, these are the things that I noticed they had in common. First of all, they tended to recover more quickly from a disaster and help return stability to their country. So they were an asset for that. Prepared people generally weren't a burden. They weren't running around begging for food and water and starving to death and being victims over and over and over on a daily basis, requiring huge amounts of resources to sustain them as human beings, to keep them just barely alive. They're usually the ones who survive. They're usually the ones also who are rarely victims. That's because they have looked ahead at some of the eventualities. One of the problems we had in Iraq was that when the military and the police essentially went home, they had criminals running wild, crime, huge crime waves, kidnappings and murders all over the place. Became a big issue. And the people that were prepared were already armed. The rest of them scrambled around to get themselves armed in some way. And yes, that's right. We gave the Iraqi people, that's right, the people in an invaded and occupied country, we gave them the right to keep and bear arms. And we didn't give them that right. That's a God-given right. Let me rephrase that. We acknowledged that right, and we allowed them to carry, to keep and bear arms. And that means they were carrying AK-47s around and had them in their homes. That's right. We allowed them to have AK-47s in their home. We allowed them to have weapons in their home. Imagine that. We trusted the people of a foreign country more than the governor of New York City trusts his own people. That's because he's a tyrant. That's because he needs to be voted out of office. And shame on you people that vote for these tyrants. Shame on you because you are, good Lord, think about it. We, the people of Iraq, an invaded nation, even we recognized that they had the right to keep and bear arms, and we supported that. And yet here in the United States, we have people that don't believe in that basic concept, that basic precept of freedom. That should tell you something about these people and why they are so dangerous to our constitutional republic. Okay, they're usually able to shape their own destiny more readily than others. While everyone else was just trying to figure out how they're going to get by from day to day, they were able to look long term and to make plans. And they were the first ones back on their feet and starting businesses and doing well in the new economy. And most importantly, at least for me, they made it possible for us to go home a little sooner, because as soon as we could hand the ball off to them, believe me, as soon as we got in there and we found there weren't any WMDs and some other things, I think the pressing issue for most people was, how do we get the heck out of this mess? Good Lord. Unfortunately, there were a lot of egomaniacs that got us into that, Wolfowitz and the rest, and they refuse, even to this day, to admit they'd made a huge mistake. Okay, so what do we do first? First, you want to make a list of everything you use in a week. Let's just recap, okay? Second, you want to make a circle like the one in my chart with your own items in it. Next, you want to make a plan for 1 week, including the things you're going to need to purchase, as well as things you need to practice and get training on. And trust me as a professional that you will succeed if you do these things. Also, check out my suggested channels. Go to, again, now is a good time. Go to my channel page and look around over there. There's a search feature. You can search for videos, but you can also look for playlists on there, and those are down on the right side of the page, just below all of those buttons. I've got buttons on how to contact your congressman, how to buy a copy of my novel, audio format of my novel. I've got links to other channels that I recommend, and those channels on the right side down there, these are people I recommend you go to, okay, for a variety of subjects. Folks like Coach Tara, Zen Kahuna, and Scooby are people that, some that I recommend for fitness type issues, and also there's some people on there for things like self-defense, Safe Arms Review, and Patriot Nurses there, Southern Prepper 1, Haas USMC, and a few others, Living History Channel. Okay, go check these channels out. I recommend you subscribe. That way you get a video from them on a daily basis, and you can check it out. And there may be something extremely important that comes your way. In fact, I guarantee it. Folks, I'm going to go ahead and conclude now, so we'll end the slideshow,
okay,
and we'll get back to my concluding statements.
Easy, right? It's actually very easy. We start out with a piece that we can handle a week, okay? Go for a full week. Now, you may say a week, that's all, but aren't you saying it could go longer? Yes, but here's the thing. Man, I was an instructor long enough in the Army to know this one. Crawl, walk, run, okay? Before we get to running, we're gonna have to learn to crawl, okay? So crawl, when you do the week plan, you put it all together, you'll start to see a lot of stuff you didn't see before. I promise you, it may seem simple, but when you start doing it and you start really looking at it, you'll say, wow, I never thought about it that way. And you'll start to see this more realistically. But more importantly, and this is me speaking as an old first sergeant, when you have a victory, okay, if I show you how to win and I lead you to a victory, to one victory, you get a sense of confidence and you say, you know what, I really can do this. The top was right. I can do this. We can succeed. And that's why I want you to take a shot at a week, okay? You get a week rounded circle of stuff done. You got a full solid week. That's a week in the bank that a meteor can hit the world and send it off its axis, and for that week you'll be able to make it. And then you'll have a very clear idea. The first chunk, that 1 week chunk, takes a while because you're trying to learn things and you're having to figure out how to do things. But after you get that week, 2 weeks comes a lot easier. And then you go, wow, let's go for a month. And then when you've got a month, you go, let's go for 3 months. And when you get 3 months, you start looking long term. So I've got, in many areas, a year. In other areas, I've got indefinite in there, and I'm going for indefinite across the board. Now, I may not make it, may not have enough time left on this life, may not have enough time before the lights go out, or the balloon goes up, or whatever the phrase is you want to use. But nonetheless, the closer I get to indefinite, the better off I'm going to be all around. Don't go for indefinite right off the bat because you're going to set yourself up for failure and you get too monofocused on one lane. I know people that are set indefinitely on security and weapons. They got that part down, but guess what? They're going to starve to death. Or worse, they're going to become pseudo-preppers. They're going to go out there and start using their guns to take from other people. Now, I know that's not you. I know that's not my subscribers. But I have seen these people posting on other channels. And some of them are just trolls, but others, by the way they talk, I got a clear indication that they've been part of the prepper community long enough that they've got a kind of an idea that we're pretty well provided for, and they think they're going to come step on us and take. Well, don't let that make you get too focused on the security aspect, but also keep in mind, listen, if you don't get yourself well-rounded, you're going to get desperate. And as I say often in these videos, desperate people do desperate things. Hey folks, thanks for tuning in, and I look forward to making more videos. I'm being discharged soon, and so, and also I have my medical issues kick in. Those two combined make it hard for me to make as many videos as I would like. That being said, I look forward to getting into some kind of a pattern when I get up to Maine, and we'll be doing a lot of hands-on videos. You're going to see all my tools laid out, and you're going to see all the things that I've been collecting over the years, and I'll show you not only how to use them, I'll also tell you how to buy them, how to find them for good prices, how to fix things that are broken, and how to get by and make a whole lot happen with not much. Now, I can't make everything happen with nothing. I can't do that much, but I can show you how to take a little and make it into a lot. And that's what we're going to work on here in the coming months, Lord willing. All right, folks, y'all have a great day, and I look forward to seeing you back soon.